Test. Let's check voice. Everybody raise your hand who can hear me. No, everybody raise your hand who can't hear me. Whew. Hi Mia, hi Taco. Hi Mary. Everybody's doing okay. There's Bonnie. Yay! Well, at least Bonnie's shirt's here. I don't know that she's here yet. Your clothing arrived, Bonnie. You've not shown up yet. It's always interesting when your clothes arrive before you do. Oh, there's the rest of her. The joys of second life. All the rest of you finally showed up. It's just, when you first showed up, it was just your dress. And nothing else is visible. No head, no hair, no legs. Welcome to Second Life. Well, guys, I am so glad you're with us. And I'm so glad you're able to join us. I think I've got live streams running. Let's double check. Alrighty then. Looks like we are up and running. So welcome everybody. So glad you're able to join us today. If you got your Bibles with you, and I hope you do, I'm going to ask you to join me in the book of Ruth. Now, for those of you who have no idea where the world that is, if you go to the Old Testament, the book of Ruth is about the fifth. It's about a fourth of the way through. Ruth is a unique book because it is written but it doesn't mention much about Israel. And but it's the story of it's explaining some of David's lineage. And so one of the great things about the book of Ruth is I consider it an awesome love story. Well, you'll see it does kind of mention God in a sense, and you'll see where we go there. Let's go ahead, and I hope that you can come to see that this is really an image. It is kind of precursor to the Advent. Ruth, for those of you who don't know, was one of David's ancestors. She was not Israelite. She wasn't. She married into the Israelite family. She married a guy named Boaz, who was one of the ancestors of Joseph, and also therefore in the lineage of David and of Jesus. And so it's a unique story. Boaz's grandmother was a prostitute named Rahab. And those of you who don't know the story of Jericho, go look up Rahab. She's the one that protected the Israelite spies, helped them spy out Jericho, and actually was saved and was adopted into the lineage. So it's kind of interesting that she played such a major role when she wasn't part of the family tree, so to speak, but she was grafted in. And I think it's an awesome story that talks about how, regardless of where our past is and what our background was, that God can still use us. So, I love this book of the Bible, and I'm hoping that over the next couple of weeks, you're going to grow to love it as well, and that you will see how it leads us to a surprising way, right to a stable in Bethlehem. Ruth has all the elements of a love story: tragedy, loss, despair, hope, triumph, loyalty, romance. So if you're looking for a way, you're looking for a go to a romantic movie, you found your choice. You just get your husband or your boyfriend to read the book of Ruth. And as a matter of fact, if you want to, you can get your boyfriends to bring you to church and you can hear me talk about Ruth, and it'll be a worship date. All joking aside, it is more than a love story. It's a story within a story. It's a story not just about Ruth, but also a story about us. And it's a story about how God takes unsuspecting people in surprising ways, from despair to delight, from hope to hope, from hurt to hope, from even amidst life's darkest times, which is where this book begins. So we have a couple of challenges we come to read the book of Ruth. One is how to read it, because it's really intended to be read in one sitting, but we're going to split it in over 3 weeks. So what do? Well, we'll go ahead and see what happens at the end of the book. So we take it step by step. And really, we can do it either way, but here's the route I'm choosing. We're going step by step. We're not going to talk about chapter 2 or 3 or 4 today. We're going to stay in chapter 1, and I'm going to do my best to follow this. Now, it would help us to understand chapter 1 if we knew all of chapter 4, but I want us to feel what the original readers felt when they read the story. Specifically here in chapter 1, I want us to feel the weight of despair without softening it by turning to the end of the book and seeing how everything is resolved. For those of you who read novels and start by reading the last few pages of the book so you know where everything is going, this is not going to be your style. You're going to be left hanging today, and you won't get more until next Sunday, or next Saturday. But it's really not going to come together until the last Saturday we teach this. Okay. The second challenge is the fact that you and I don't have the benefit of hearing this story in its original language. The author of the book of Ruth, and we're not sure who that is brilliant. The author uses literary devices beautifully throughout the book, some of which we can catch, but others we simply can't because we're not reading it or hearing it read as it was originally written and intended to be read. For example, there are times when a point is emphasized through the use of alliteration in the Hebrew, and there's a staccato-like style when the author describes certain events using certain words, and we just don't catch an English translation. So we're going to miss some of this if you don't speak fluent Hebrew or Aramaic. So I want to do something a little differently than we normally do each week. Instead of just reading through the scripture here at the start, I want us to read it slowly, pausing along the way, and I want to point out some of the details the Holy Spirit has inspired the author to write, in order to help us get a deeper grasp of the beauty of the story. Basically, I want to tell this story well, so start here in verse 1 and move slowly. Keep in mind, this is only one of two books in the Bible named after a woman. The other is Esther. It's the only book in the Old Testament named after someone who is not Jewish. So we know from the start of this book is unique. So, with that set up, let's read verse 1. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a man of Bethlehem in Judah went to sojourn to the city of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. Okay, this is where we get a glimpse into the time period in which the story takes place. In fact, hold your place there in Ruth, and you turn all the way back to the table of contents. I want to remind you where the story fits in the story of Scripture we've read over, you look at the first 17 books of the Old Testament. These books basically give us the history of the Old Testament. Verse 5, Genesis, Exodus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, tells the story of God's people leading up to the Promised Land. Then the books of Joshua and Judges tell the story of God's people taking over and settling the Promised Land. Joshua and Judges are fairly chronicle, but when Ruth spotlights a story that happened during the middle of Judges, some scholars think it was somewhere around Judges 10. The same thing happens later when you get to Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther. And Ezra and Nehemiah happen pretty much chronologically, and Esther highlights a story that happened during the time of Ezra and Nehemiah. So, the book of Ruth happened during the time of Judges in the Promised Land. If we come back to Ruth and turn on one page to the left, you'll see the very end of the book of Judges. Judges 21-25, you get a summary of this time period. It says, in those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. This was not a good thing. The people of God were indulging in all kinds of immorality and idolatry. It was a dark time. It was made even worse when we read Ruth 1:1 for the fact that there was a famine in Bethlehem. Most of us here don't know what famine is like. We have no idea what it means to be truly without food, not knowing if you will have enough food to live on or that your children will have enough to live on. It means literally starving. Sometimes when we're hungry, we'll say, I'm starving. But ladies and gentlemen, we are not starving. Far from it. And what's even more interesting is the word Bethlehem means house of bread. So the picture here is that the house of bread has no bread. As a result, the Jewish man leaves Bethlehem to go to Moab. And as soon as we hear Moab, we need to realize that this is not just a foreign land geographically. Moab is a foreign land spiritually and historically. Back in Genesis 19, the Moabites began when Lot had an incestuous relationship with his daughter. Moabites were an outcast people from the start. Then they resisted the Israelites in the book of Numbers when the Israelites wanted to pass through the land. Also, the women of Moab seduced Jewish men into immorality and idolatry, which resulted in 24,000 Israelites dying. They worshiped false gods. In Deuteronomy 23, God said, no Moabite can enter into the assembly of the Lord down to the 10th generation. They were an accursed people. So for a Jewish man to go in Moab was shameful, to say the least. It was like he was turning his back on God. So, now let's get to verse 2. The man. Sorry. Say that again. The man was Elimelech. The name of his wife Naomi, and the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah. They went into the country of Moab and remained there. Elimelech's name means God is king. This is a time when the judges ruled and there is no king. There's a clear announcement from the beginning of the story now that God is king. Now, these next verses we're about to read introduce tragedy in the heart of the story. Diana mentioned earlier, the language here is the Hebrew as sort of a staccato style. It is tense, terse, quick, and almost unfeeling. We don't have any details. We don't have any emotion, just cold, hard, blunt, heavy facts. Verse 3. But Elimelech, the husband of Naomi, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. These took Moabite wives, and the name of the one was Orpah, and the name of the other was Ruth. No, it was not Oprah Winfrey. That wasn't her. And they lived there about 10 years. And both Mahlon and Chilion died, so the woman was left without her 2 sons and her husband. But there it is. As a matter of 3 verses, you have 10 years of torrential tragedy. And just like that, this family of 4 Israelites is down to 1. First, Elimelech, leader of the family who brought them to this strange land, dies. Naomi's left as a widow, raising 2 sons. The 2 sons marry Moabite women. Keep in mind the history. Moabite women are the ones who seduced Israelite men into idolatry and immorality. They were not even allowed into the assembly of the Lord. So, Ruth 1 describes tragedy in Naomi's family. And on top of this shame, after 10 years, Naomi's sons, Mahlon and Chilion, both die. We're not sure if they died at the same time, one soon after the other, or what happened, but probably unexpected. So in many ways, as far as we know, there's an undeserved tragedy in Naomi's life. But finds herself with 2 Moabite daughters-in-law, neither of whom had any heir to carry out in their family. That was the curse. This sets up the ultimate problem in the book of Ruth, because Naomi's family now teeters on extinction. Sorry, to emphasize this when we get to verse 5. Notice the author doesn't even mention Naomi's name. The woman was left without her 2 sons and her husband. But Naomi had lost her identity. She's an aged widow, 2 barren daughters-in-law from Moab. She has no hope, no security, no home, no provision, nothing. And if we don't feel the way of this, then we will miss the wonder of verse 6. At a time when this suffering woman and her 2 foreign daughter-in-laws find themselves in utter hopelessness, we come to verse 6. And what does verse 6 say? Then she arose with her daughters-in-law to return from the country of Moab, for she had heard of the fields of Moab, that the Lord had visited his people and given them food. The Lord, this is the first time God is mentioned in the book. Yahweh was visited his people, is what it says. The actual word there they use is Yahweh. He has restored Bethlehem to the house of bread it was intended to be. This is one of those verses that has figurative alliteration, just brightly jumps off the page. In the backdrop of the dark verses that preceded, then the verse 7 says, so she set out from the place where she was with her 2 daughters-in-law, and they went on the way to return to the land of Judah. Okay, so, you got the picture so far. Now, they haven't ended up having a dialogue at this point, and Naomi says to her daughters, keep in mind, this is the first dialogue we see in the book. Some of the most important facets of the book of Ruth are going to happen in this dialogue. The author uses specific, intentional conversations in over half the book to communicate the point of the story, so pay attention. Whenever you see these profound conversations take place, up until this point, over 10 years has passed. People have died, barrenness, hopelessness have sunk in, but nobody's even said a word in the story until verse 8. But Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, go return to your own mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you, as you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant you that you might find rest, each of you in the house of her husband. This is more than just goodbye and God bless you. She thanks them for their kindness. You can only imagine what these 3 women have been through together. Right? They've all lost their husbands. Ruth and Orpah have left their own people to marry Israelite men. They're now set apart from the Moabites. Both of them have lived for years in barrenness without a child, only to see their husbands die. These 3 women have lived, struggled, cried, and mourned together for years. Naomi turns to bless them and free them from whatever responsibility that they had to her. Naomi says, you deserve better. You deserve husbands and a family, not to be stuck with an old widow like me. You can imagine the emotion that the rest of this verse 9 continues. Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. And they said to her, no, we will return to you with your people. Picture it. They're weeping together, and then as Naomi speaks, the weeping grows. The 3 of them consider not being together. As a sign of continued kindness to Naomi, they say, no, we will go with you. Naomi responds basically by building an argument for why they should stay and not go with her. Listen to her reasoning. It's pretty solid. Get to verse 11. Turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Have I yet sons in my womb that they might become your husbands? Turn back, my daughters. Go your way. I am too old to have a husband. If I should say I have hope, even if I should have a husband this night and should bear sons, would you therefore wait until they have grown? Would you therefore refrain from marrying? No, my daughters. For it is exceedingly bitter for me for your sake, for the hand of the Lord has gone out against me. Okay, so if they stay in Moab, they can find another husband, have a family, and live happily ever after. But if they come with Naomi, they'll have nothing. You've got to understand the picture here. Naomi starts talking about the fact that she has no more sons. In Deuteronomy 5:5-10, provision is made for situations like this. If there was a childless widow, then the brother of her husband would take her under his care and provide her in his family. So if Naomi had other sons, they could provide for Orpah and Ruth. Problem is, Naomi has no more sons. She doesn't even have a husband. Even if she did have a husband and would have another son that day, Orpah and Ruth would never wait long enough to be cared for by her son. Naomi is basically saying to them, there's no hope for me, and there will be no hope for you if you come with me. It's even heightened here in the last sentence when he says, obviously the Lord's hand is against me. The implication is, if you stay with me, the Lord's hand will also be against you. Why would you want to come with me? Very depressing book, isn't it? Don't you think? And you're sitting there wondering, why in the world did you title this Hope for the Hurting? Well, we'll get there. Just bear with me. I promise we'll get there. And to be honest with you, if you've read this before, you might think, man, this sounds kind of rude. She's being kind of rude to these girls. I mean, does she not want them? But the reality at this point is Naomi seems to be driven by kindness. She's saying, here, have a husband. You stay here. Don't tie up your lot with mine. What was the effect of her speech? Well, they lifted up their voices and wept again, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. Feel the emotion of the scene? They're weeping. Orpah walks away, but Ruth stays. And not just stays, she clings. The same word used in Genesis 2:24 to describe the marriage bond. When a wife leaves her husband to cleave or cling to her husband. When a wife leaves her family to cleave or cling to her husband. In the middle of her tears, Naomi says, see, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law. The stage is set for one of the most memorable speeches in all of the Bible. Beauty, courage, commitment, devotion, love, and loyalty are all wrapped up into one. Listen to what Ruth says. Do not urge me to leave you or return from following you. For where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there will I be buried. May the Lord do so to me, and more so also, if anything but death parts me from you. Wow, I find it interesting these words are often used in wedding vows. They're a pretty incredible picture of commitment, but if you use them in your wedding, that's great. But the reality is that it's a daughter-in-law speaking to her mother-in-law who's saying this. Let me tell you that I've never seen in a wedding speaking to your future in-laws like that. Let's face it. Language is simple but very profound. You can almost imagine Ruth loosening her embrace on Naomi, looking directly into her eyes and saying, don't try to talk me out of this. I am committed to you. As your God is my witness, I am committed to you, and he will judge me if I break this commitment. A single moment, Ruth forsakes everything. Her homeland, her people, her gods, her religion, her safety, her future, her destiny, her everything to go with Naomi. This is not just for this life. There was an intimate connection that Near Eastern thought between where you were buried and what you thought about the afterlife. Ruth said, I'm going to be buried with you, with your people, under your God. It's the ultimate commitment, not just to Naomi, but to Naomi's God. Her words are so strong, so poignant, that they silence Naomi, and we didn't hear another word until we get to Bethlehem. See how this silence on the road to Bethlehem sets the stage for a somewhat awkward entrance into Bethlehem? And listen to verse 18. And when Naomi saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more. So the two of them went on until they came to Bethlehem. And when they came to Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them. And the women said, is this Naomi? Just put yourself in Naomi's shoes. She walks into the city after years before her husband and her family had turned their backs on. They'd left the promised land to retreat into a pagan land. Now she's coming back, this time without her husband or without her sons. And not just without them, she's coming back with a Moabite woman by her side. The word is out. The town is shocked. Is this Naomi? Now Naomi means pleasant. So listen to what it says. As soon as they ask, is this the pleasant one? Naomi responds in verse 20. She said to them, do not call me Naomi, call me Mara. The Lord has dealt very bitterly with me. I went away full, and the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi when the Lord has testified against me, and the Almighty has brought calamity upon me? Imagine being those women who approaches Naomi. Hey, you're back, Naomi. And she looks and says, Naomi, pleasant? No. Nothing could be farther from the truth. My name is bitter. I left this place full with everything I loved and everything that was most important to me, but I have come back with nothing. I am empty. I am hopeless. I have nothing but desperation. Now, you put yourself in Naomi's shoes at this point. Here's Naomi standing in front of a group of people with you by your side, looking, saying to them, I am bitter. I went away. Now I have nothing coming back. While listening to Naomi, these women, our eyes are turning to you and your face goes straight down. You are a picture of the bitterness the Almighty brings. You are a picture of calamity.